We're live.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but tonight we are continuing the films in which Kroll, otherwise known as Ron, has decided to subject us with this month to show us exactly what kind of person he is and what kind of films he likes. So, thank you, Kroll, for bringing these films to our attention. Some of them, it's been quite some time, but I
Happy.
believe, Jake, you are the host for the night, are you not?
I believe that is so.
Alrighty, so why don't you tell us a little bit about the film that we are going to be discussing?
All right, I can do that. Unless Kroll, unless you want to do the intro real quick, it's up to you.
Go ahead.
All right. We will be looking at the 1995 film that, if I do recall correctly, was that year's Best Picture winner. Written and directed by Mr. Mel Gibson. Per IMDb, Scottish warrior William Wallace leads his countrymen in a rebellion to free his homeland from the tyranny of King Edward I of England. I'm speaking, of course, of Braveheart. A little film few people have heard of over the years. So on that note, we'll start with you, Kroll. Is this your first time with the movie? I should imagine probably not. And what was your first reaction to this?
No, definitely not. I've seen it a few times. It's been quite a while since I've seen it. My reaction now is pretty much the same as then. It's pretty awesome. It's an epic movie. The fight scenes are phenomenal. I've always loved sword and sorcery. Obviously, you don't get sorcery in here because it's supposed to be based on more of a true story than that. So, it's just an awesome huge movie, 3 hour movie, but you really it goes through fast. You don't feel like you're sitting there for 3 hours. I don't think. It's well paced, enjoyable. All of the acting was great. The scenery I enjoyed. Just all around awesome film. And if it did win for the year, it deserved it. It definitely did. Definitely one of the biggest films of all time, in my opinion.
All right. How about you, Tammy? Is this your first go around with this particular movie, and what were your reactions to it?
Oh no, I've seen it plenty of times. I believe I seen it the first time not long after it came out, and I just thought it was really incredible. I mean, very moving. Um, like Forrest said, the scenery is just awesome, and what the movie stands for is just, you know, I think that's something that everybody can believe in. So I enjoyed it very much.
Sounds good. How about you, Forrest? Is this your first dance with this particular film? And what is your reaction, thoughts on it?
No, this is not my first time watching it. Although this is my first time watching it in 20 years. Because the first time I saw it was 20 years ago. My parents rented it from Hollywood Video. I was about 14 at the time. I thought it was really good. I thought it was in back then. I thought it was actually really well. I thought it was excellent, very well done. Excellent cast, music, the act, a lot of good action, and the costumes, the music. It was very well done. It was very well done. Very well. extremely well made. The editing, also like just on so many levels that were so good. And watching it now, I think it's pretty. It's still excellent. I think it's still a very good movie. From what I understand, that this movie did deviate a lot from the historical. There's some significant historical inaccuracies about William Wallace in this movie. For some artistic liberties. Were taken.
Put it mildly.
Yeah, like apparently, yeah, like I only found out they didn't wear kilt, that Scotsmen didn't fight the English in kilts back then. But I think it's still, I mean, even though I'm sure that that Mel Gibson's off-screen antics have kind of soured some people, soured some audiences, perceptions on this movie, this movie and his body of work overall. But I still think it's an excellent movie. I don't know. I guess maybe it's a little. I don't know if it's dipped a little bit in quality for me. Not so much because of Gibson himself, just just because of that passage of time. Since I've last seen it. Actually, no. Actually, take that back. I think it still holds up. Just the action, the costumes, the performances. It's exciting. It's got moments. There's moments that are funny. I guess it's it's still a gripping story. It's still a gripping story.
All right. Was that your? Did that wrap it up for you, or?
I think so.
All right. Sounds good. How about you, Brandon? Is this your first go around with this one, and what are your overall thoughts?
Man, who is this Mel Gibson person? I don't think I've ever heard of him.
We haven't covered any of his movies on this channel. None at all.
Was he in Friends? I can't remember. He was one of the Friends, right?
Oh, yeah.
He was Chandler, right? But no, I've watched this one many times. I didn't get to watch it for this week just because it's a 3-hour some movie, and I really don't like watching this type of epic movie on the small screen, which is and in pieces, which would be the only way I would have been able to see it. So instead of ruining my experience by doing that, I just decided I would just go back in the past when I last watched it, which was around the time I got it on Blu-ray, which is a couple of years ago. But I remember first watching it. I think we first watched it when it came to theaters in '95. And I know that we watched it again in high school because they wheeled in the TV and then showed it to us in pieces, which was kind of fun. It's a very good movie. It was in that time period where I felt Mel Gibson could do no wrong. I think it's really kicked off that period more than anything else of him being a director. And
I think that's the point.
Not quite, but close.
I feel like that's around the time that critics were starting to take. Up to that point, he was just known for action roles like Mad Max and Lethal Weapon.
Yeah,
and this is the point where critics and audiences started taking him more seriously.
Well, this was his second time as a director. We'll get to that in a minute, though.
Yeah, I mean, there's him before that.
And there's actually something interesting about the way he got to direct this film too, because there's some behind the scenes stuff. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
But as far as the films, I mean, for instance, during that period, my favorite of the films was The Patriot, and then Braveheart at that time. But I remember that everybody was all about Braveheart. I remember watching the Late Show, and they had that reenactment with chimpanzees doing Braveheart. And he's like, yes, he shoots lightning bolts from his arse. And then he's like, it's like the English are coming. And he just, the chimp bends over, is like, hold on, I'm doing it. And then the lightning bolt rips Forrest from his backside and takes them out. Which I still, that I think is the thing I take home the most from the movie, even though it's not even in the movie. But still, I thought it was a good film. Very well done, very well acted. Still a great film. Definitely one I like watching on the big screen. And I still consider probably one of the better ones I've seen for a while.
Very good. And how about you, Dave?
Well, this is definitely not my first rodeo on this film. I didn't see it in the theater, but I did have the 2-tape VHS of it at one point in time. I believe it was a 2-tape thing. Because
I believe you are correct.
A lot of 3-hour movies were two.
This is one of those movies where you actually have to sit down, lay back, and enjoy the ride, because it is gripping from the beginning to the very end. And I enjoy this film. I don't care what the critics say about Mel Gibson. Art is art. And honestly, this was about when he was starting to get noticed. Not quite, but thereabouts, because shortly after this, he did The Passion of the Christ and Apocalypto, which, if you look at him as a filmmaker, he does a fantastic job. But that being said, this movie is about everything that you can say about freedom. And it shows you a little bit of the tyranny. Of course, the last time I saw the guy playing King.
Hey, Dustin.
Yeah. I just recently saw him in Silver Streak with with Richard Pryor and
right.
Gene Wilder, and
right.
You almost don't recognize him.
No.
But I love the fact that there's some amazing, beautiful scenery in this film. You can definitely see there's some humor involved in some of the scenes, and I like it. I mean, it was entertaining, and I'm glad that I had the chance and opportunity to watch it again, because you don't get great films that often, and this is one of those. So,
all right, very good. So hey, Dustin, did you want to do? You got us just before the end of the first impressions. If you wanted to throw yours in.
Hey, I ended up oversleeping. This is a great medieval drama action kind of thing. I almost used the phrase sword and sorcery, but there's no sorcery, so it's not historic.
That's exactly what Kroll said.
I would say middle-aged war epic.
War epic, that's it. It's not historically accurate, but it's such a good story and it's so well told, you don't really care ultimately. I made a friend on Xbox Live a while ago who was like in the British military, and I just mentioned this movie casually just to see what he would say, and he was like, William Wallace was a terrorist, he was. You know, he didn't. I added that he was, but it was, you could almost hear it in his voice. And it's like, and I just kind of teasing was like, well, of course the British would say that. And he kind of figured out I was joking after that. But anyway, I don't even remember the first time I saw this movie. Like, it was a long time ago, and I remember being pretty blown away by it. But it's overall, it's a pretty good movie. I mean, I think there are some people who somehow don't like it just because it's inaccurate.
Or because it's Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson is a jerk, as we all now know. I'm not going to go into it, but ew. Lack of a long, detailed description. But in the distant past, before that came to light, and I knew about it, he was pretty awesome in this. I mean, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but one thing, I used to read Roger Ebert reviews. Like, I had a big book of them, and I would pick movies by reading those reviews. Like, this is something I did in like elementary school. Like, I would just get the book. I would just get the big book of reviews and like read about movies I hadn't seen. And one line that stood out from Ebert's review is, it's debatable whether William Wallace actually cried out freedom as he was stretched on the rack. But, like, it probably wasn't his dying cry. But that doesn't stop Mel Gibson from making it his dying cry.
He wasn't even beheaded in real life.
I think he was dismembered, though, right?
He was
he was
and quartered.
Yeah. You'd think they would have done something with the head, too. They were cutting everything else up.
Yeah.
I know there's a beer called Robert the Bruce. That's about all I know about Robert the Bruce. In terms of other historical characters.
Well, what's interesting in 2019, they actually did a kind of a sequel to Braveheart with the same guy playing Robert the Bruce. You should check it out.
I saw that
they did that.
I mean, I haven't seen it, but I saw that it exists, and I was thinking about it's called After Braveheart. So yeah,
right.
Looks like it might be interesting.
So Dustin, was that all for you? Okay.
Well, this movie would play on TV a lot, and I've seen it many times that way. So I guess my first impression's been kind of diluted by that, I guess. Like, it's harder to remember like how I really felt, but this is a movie that I would always just kind of stop what I was doing and watch. So it's that good.
Sounds about right. All right. So I guess, Crowley, you picked one this week that everyone is familiar with. So we'll get those every now and then. They can still be fun. This is one that I couldn't even tell you my first viewing of this. I really don't know. I don't know if it was with the family. I don't know if it was at school. I feel like we did watch it at school at some point. I don't know if it was we watched it on TV or if we actually rented it and watched it properly. I know we owned it at some point, probably not long after that. And I feel like I had it in my VHS collection before getting it on DVD, before eventually getting it on Blu-ray. And the last time I saw it probably was when I watched the Blu-ray copy, which I feel like that was about 1.5 to 2 years ago-ish. It was recent, but not like recent. But I still definitely wanted to make sure to rewatch this. And so I did get it knocked out. It was very late at night, and it is a 3-hour movie, so a couple of scenes are less fresh in my memory than the rest of the film. But still, it is a very good movie. It is very well made. It's very well put together. Whatever personal issues Mel Gibson has, and despite his bloodthirsty nature that comes very clear in the movies he directs, he is a solid director. And this is one of his more solid efforts. As I mentioned before, this was his sophomore effort, and The Man Without a Face did actually get him a lot of critical praise and put him on a lot of people's maps as a director, but I think I saw this first. I'm almost sure I did.
I did
What's
want to
that, Dan?
mention something really quick.
Huh?
Evidently, development began initially on this film from Metro Goldwyn Mayer,
Right.
about when producer Alan Ladd Jr. picked up the project from the writer, which was in fact Randall Wallace, not Mel Gibson.
Right. Right.
Because I know in the beginning you said written and directed. Well, it was.
Did I say written?
Yeah.
I might have meant directed and starred by. Okay.
Then
sorry.
MGM went through some new management, and Ladd left the studio, and he took the project with him at the time, but Gibson then decided to direct the film. So, I just wanted to say that. So.
Right. No, I definitely did not intend to say he wrote the film, but that I could have misspoken because my brain is. I'll do what I can. Let's put it that way. But as far as this one goes, as far as what Brandon was talking about this being kind of the start of things, again, as we all know, because most of us, not all of us, but most of us were on the Maverick discussion. This came out the year after Maverick. So for me, Gibson was already a fixture long before I ever knew of Braveheart. And I know we've also covered the Mad Max movies, which for some other people would have made him a fixture in there. But Braveheart kind of was the thing that really put him on the Oscar favorite list for a while. And it is a glaringly inaccurate film. Over the years, it has grown a reputation as one of the most inaccurate historical dramas ever produced. But it's a damn fine piece of entertainment. And you might accidentally learn a few things while you're at it. So it kind of works out in the end, I suppose. And it does rock. Normally I put up a picture of some of my favorite characters. I did not do this time, but I've got to say Edward the Longshanks is one of the best terrible villains I think I've seen in any movie. He is an incredible villain, and Patrick McGowan does such a good job with that role. It's interesting that this came out the same time that he played a couple of high-profile judge roles. He was the judge in The Crucible and in A Time to Kill. So he was kind of at the top of his game in 95, 96 as well. So I found that interesting. This time I was definitely looking at the film as, okay, I know this is inaccurate as all hell. Can I really get into it the same way as before? And yeah, it holds up reasonably well. I couldn't even guess how many times I have seen the movie over the years, but it's definitely a classic. It's a fun film. Kick-ass score, which we'll have to get to later on, and some other good stuff all around. So I guess we'll start with as we said before, this is basically the story of William Wallace, and the film kind of, for all intents and purposes, starts and ends. Well, it goes a little beyond his end, but it starts with him, and starts with an account that by most accounts probably never happened, but it's a pretty darn good way to kick off the idea that Longshanks is one hell of a rotten king. Basically, it kicks off with Wallace's father and older brother going off to a meeting that's been called of the local leaders. And Longshanks had supposedly proposed a peace treaty or some such thing. And Wallace, of course, follows because, he's a kid and he doesn't take no for an answer, and ends up witnessing this horrible sight of all these leaders and their vassals hanging from the rafters of this hut that they had been ambushed in.
And this is brutal for a young kid to see, especially since there was a young
Hell, it was
kid
brutal for his old man to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be something that would scar you for life, that's for sure. And then, of course, that does rile up the remaining leaders, his father included, and they go off to battle. And, of course, they do not return alive. And, Wallace is taken in by his uncle Argyle, who's played by Brian Cox. Fun little cameo there. And Argyle raises him to be very well educated, and shows him the world, essentially. But then he comes back to Scotland because that is his home. And we also had this lovely little scene at the graveside between him and this girl, this friend of his, Marin. I believe it was Murren, sorry. And if I believe in real life, her name was Marion, but they were worried about what's the word? Robin Hood. They were worried about people thinking about Robin Hood.
Wow.
So they changed the name a little bit. But yeah, Murren, they had this lovely scene at the graveyard where she gives him a thistle and he remembers her. And when he comes back, they start their little tete-a-tete, I guess. But he comes back, they re-meet again at a wedding where we see one of the more dastardly things that Longshanks has done. He has tried to encourage colonization of Scotland by telling nobles that they can have the right of, I think it's called prima nocte, first night, where basically if a couple gets married, the noble gets first rights to the wife, which is a pretty messed up idea when you think about it. But we can see how it could appeal to a certain crowd. So I've kind of barreled through several scenes right there. Did anyone want to throw in on any of those particular moments that stood out to them or what have you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget that first scene with the them getting married, and as soon as they get married, he goes to that Lord goes to claim her, the husband just wants to tear them all apart, and she's gently telling us, always let him go, I'm going, and just she whispered something, probably just I'll be with you the rest of our lives, don't think about this, type thing. It's very, very moving, and so well done, just basically just wanted to say that, that it was just very memorable in the movie, and definitely a horrible thing for the king to creed that they can do that and stuff. And yeah, I mean, the lords could have done it on their own without the support of the king and probably gotten away with it anyways. But yeah, the fact they had the support of the king too is even worse, in my opinion.
Right. And I read conflicting reports. Some say that this was a practice on the continent, and some say that it was just straight up myth. But apparently there's no evidence it was ever done in the British Isles. But it definitely, like I said, really helps to the audience to think that, wow, this is this guy the Brit who says he's in charge of Scotland. Well, he's a little bit of a rotten rat bastard for instituting such a rule, isn't he? But
I told David when it came to that part that I guess I wouldn't live past my wedding night, and he's like, "Why? Is it because the minute that guy touched me, I'd kill him?"
Well, one thing that is a good fact there is that most of the monarchs in the British line, no matter where you go, most of them were assholes. So yeah,
right.
The vast majority, I don't think there were very many good monarchs, and many of the nobles with power were not exactly good either. So,
right.
So keep that in mind.
And it's my understanding that Edward the Longshanks fought in the Crusades. And I'm sorry, but most of the people who fought in the Crusades were assholes. So, that's a given right there. So, but anyway, because of this, of course, Wallace and Murren, they decide to get married, but they don't want. He obviously he doesn't want to share, and she obviously doesn't particularly want to be shared, so they marry in secret.
I just want to say,
okay,
with the like returning like the pressed thistle, like that's like a real crowd pleaser moment, because like women watching the movie tend to like always melt at that scene. Because I watch for a while I was watching a lot of like YouTube reactors like react to Braveheart, and people pretty much always break down crying, "Oh my god, he saved that!"
right.
Actually, you're gonna laugh at this, Brandon. How I rewatched it, Braveheart, this time, because I've seen it so many times, is I watched that Popcorn and Bed Ladies like full reaction from Patreon to it. And like her and her sister watched this, and they just both like passed out. Oh my god, he brought it back! I know Kim can't stand that lady, but I love that channel.
Oh, she'd be cursing if she watched it.
Like she did Jurassic Park 3 yesterday, and she was just so frightened the entire time. It was incredible.
Nice. I would have to say the only thing with me I'd wonder would be that thistle, if I recall correctly, had some pretty solid color left when he returned it to her. And I'm wondering how well that particular plant holds its color. Some do better than others.
Hey, he can shoot lightning out of his ass. So
that's true.
I do think that is a romantic aspect of the film.
Oh, it is.
Shooting lightning out of your arse? Yeah.
Apparently,
that was the most romantic part of the movie.
Right, exactly.
In making of features, they did say that in the writing of the movie, that they were like, we need a scene that will make women fall in love with him, and they came up with that thistle thing as kind of their pandering move, and it apparently works very well. So
hey,
wow,
Eeyore from
honestly,
Who's Corner will approve.
I mean, it worked on me.
Honestly, at that time, it didn't take a whole lot to make women swoon over Mel Gibson. I mean, I kind of joked when they put out What Women Want. I'm like, well, duh. I will say that Catherine McCormick was pretty darn cute in this movie too. So there definitely was something for everyone there.
And also Sophie Marceau too.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Oh, I loved Sophie. She was just so gorgeous. I mean, both women were definitely good looking.
Oh yeah.
Let's go ahead.
I did want to point out that not everybody that fought in the Crusades was an asshole. The children that fought in the Children's Crusades were probably not assholes yet. They were just sent by the Pope to go die. Well, actually, yeah.
It was the medieval version of the child broiler. But...
they could have been little assholes,
Well, well, yeah, it's possible. What was I going to say now? Oh, shoot. I had a thought, but I've lost it. Anyway, oh yeah, as far as I think it was someone had mentioned that things had changed since the writing. Apparently, they were originally going to make it a rose, but that was one thing they actually decided to change to make it more accurate, because a rose would absolutely not have gone over well. Not just because of chronology issues, but because roses are so heavily associated with the British. That they would have that might not have had the same meaning that was intended. So Thistle was actually a good change in that respect, and I think that's kind of fun. But at any rate, and I know Thistle means something in the language of flowers, but I can't recall it off the top of my head. I just they are very pretty and very prickly, so that's kind of a fun combo. Guess it works for Scottish individuals there. Major change is that apparently Wallace was gentry from the lowland, and here he's shown as a poor farmer from the highlands. So that's a big change right there. But at any rate, things don't stay blissful for these two for long. Some British ne'er-do-wells come through and try to cause trouble and end up killing Maron in the process. And needless to say, that kind of pisses Wallace off. And
well, he killed her because he tries to rape her, and she's fighting him off, and then William comes by and beats up the guards and kicks the shit out of the guy and gets her on a horse and tells her to take off, and he's fighting off the soldiers basically by himself, and they're chasing her, and eventually they there's just so many of them, and they catch up and they knock her off the horse and put her up against the board and slice her throat by the leader of the
magistrate.
The English leader of
very graphic.
Scotland. Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Right.
You see her face, and as she had her throat cut, and so well done. It's so believable that this woman just had her throat cut. And yeah, and of course, William Wallace. They're like, let him come to us, and he does, and looks like he's giving up, and of course, he doesn't give up. He isn't giving up, and that first soldier that's kind of slowly coming over to him, and then he's like just looking at him in his eyes, and then it just bam, just bashes him, and just all hell breaks loose, and Mel Gibson goes berserk, and fucking phenomenal scene, absolutely phenomenal. I think.
Yeah, that's our first battle scene, and it's pretty good indicator of like what's to come. Like it starts off like very tense, and then it just ramps up, and it's kind of hard to describe the battles in these because they're would you say they're realistic? They're almost like hyper realistic. Like the hits are really bloody.
Yeah,
everything
they are
pretty much instantly lethal. Like they're nasty.
I think they go a little over the top, much like they did with
honestly,
Patriot.
I feel like they were reserved. Like if Tammy were like killed, I would have just gone all out like brutal battle axe on them. But they had an actual plan. It was good. It was a good plan to have the other people back him up and sit and him go in alone.
Right. And this is and I'm going to admit this was one of the scenes where I kind of nodded off on this feeling. So I'm glad that I was able to get such a good description here to remind myself of what went down. I remember Marin's death, or Marin's death. I keep saying Marin for some reason. Marin. Her death was one of those scenes I remember, like from my first viewing. I feel like I remember going, what? Like, like I couldn't believe they went there. Now, granted, this was many years ago, and I was not used to seeing. So, this was probably one of the more graphically violent films I had seen at that point in my life. And yes, that was one of the first indications. Though, there was the scene earlier with the people hanging, but that was violence that had already been done. Like, this was the scene where something was happening right then and there. And we should probably also mention around this time, we've also been reintroduced to William's best bud, Hamish, who now that they've grown up is played by Brendan Gleeson. And he's always a solid actor. And Hamish is just like this big, oversized dude who just, like him and his father, who's played by Campbell, who's played by James Cosmo. Hamish's father always amused me because he was like the dude that just wouldn't stop. You know what I mean? Like, he takes these horrible injuries all through the movie, and he just keeps on going.
And, is that all you got?
Right. Exactly. Is that bring it on? But so
what did you say, Dustin? I heard you speak, Dustin.
He gets pretty torn up. I said, yeah, I was agreeing with everyone.
Right. I think he has like a major injury in each battle, and then like the third or fourth battle, that's it. He's done. But even then, he survives the battle, and it's afterwards but then, of course, like I said, Hamish is right there by his side pretty much from the start, by Wallace's side. Later, we're introduced to his other major lieutenant, whose name was Stephen, I believe it was. But I don't think we've gotten quite to him yet.
I did want to mention one thing since you brought that up is
sure.
When he's throwing the boulders and Wayne Wallace is like,
I was just thinking the same
thing. You can use that in battle, and he's like, oh, I could crush you. He's like, all right, then do it. And
right.
He stands there, and he throws, and of course he throws way over him, which knew was going to happen. And then Mel Gibson just takes this little rock and just bam, nails right through the eye.
Kind of like a David and Goliath moment.
He's still standing there. He's like, I should remember the rocks, and then he just falls over.
Right.
So hilarious.
That was a funny scene. That was at the wedding scene, I believe, like during their first reintroduction, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
That was fun. All right. So I believe, and again, y'all feel free to help out with but I believe at this point we've kind of gotten the indication that Wallace is not going to sit quietly. He's not going to suffer fools anymore. And I believe this is around the point in the film where we're introduced, on the one hand, to Robert the Bruce and some of the Scottish lords, and on the other hand, to Edward the Longshanks and his son Edward II. I believe they both kind of come in around that point. Does that sound about right?
Sounds about right.
Okay. So like I said, on the one hand, we have Angus McFadden playing Robert the Bruce, who is nominally the head of the Scottish, lords and whatever. You've got several individuals, Craig and Mornay, and some of the others who are some of the head
On the
lords.
Scottish Council, I believe.
Yes,
they call it.
the Scottish Council. And then you have the one who's simply referred to as the leper, who I believe was actually Robert's father, who's sitting up in his room acting all Palpatine-ish. He just reminds me of Palpatine. I don't know. He really does. And then, like I said, in the English court, where we're introduced to, again, Patrick McGoohan is Edward the First, known as Edward the Longshanks, because dude was tall. This was back in the day when people were short. And apparently Longshanks was 6 foot. I want to say 6'2", which actually he was the exact same height as Patrick McGoohan, which is kind of interesting that apparently William Wallace was like 6'5". You know, at one point they make some sort of crack of, I thought he was like 7 feet tall. And of course, Mel Gibson's going by and he's not even 6 foot. But he actually was apparently taller than Gibson was. But that, but they got Longshanks absolutely right. And his son is played by Peter Hanley, and they play him as this very effeminate sort of ineffectual in nearly every way sort of character, which is one of the things that the film has gotten some criticism for over the years. Is among many other things, some people find kind of a homophobic vibe to the way that Edward II is shown. I'm not sure I really buy that. I feel like he's simply shown as a weakling who probably does swing that way, but it's more to show him as a weakling who's an embarrassment to his father, I think, than anything else.
He has a boyfriend. I mean, you know,
right, and the father threw him out the window.
I'm reminded of the
that scene was. I mean, it was fucked up. It was kind of funny the way he did it, but it wasn't funny. You know, it was fucked up, but it was almost like that in that other movie with the cat. Like, you just throw my cat out the window.
Almost.
You know, it's just like kind of like he's like, oh, you know, you're gonna, you know, tell me about, oh, you know, what would you advise now? I just throws him out the window. Like,
yeah, but whereas most people found that cat scene quite amusing. Yeah, most people found the cat scene amusing. Most people did not find this scene amusing. Yeah. Brandon, you were trying to say something?
I was saying the prince reminded me of the Prince of Swamp Castle in Monty Python and Holy Grail.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. And then, of course, you were also introduced somewhere in here to his new bride, Princess Isabelle of France, who is played by Sophie Marceau. And she does a fine job here. Major historical inaccuracy here. She was about probably 3 or 4 when the events of this film took place and still living in France. She did not marry Edward II until after Wallace and Edward I had both passed on. So that was a pretty significant change, especially given what really happens with her later.
She would have been too young now, that sex scene with William Wallace.
A little young, just a little young for that. Yes,
and yes, impregnated by him.
Yes, just a little young for that.
Just a little too young.
But at any rate. So we get an idea of the different politics in play, and you know, you've got some, you know, the British initially thinking maybe they can buy him off, and the Scottish kind of going, well, dude, you're being a little overly aggressive here. And basically, I'm trying to recall, was that first battle scene? The first battle scene was before the bribery scene, right? Am I remembering that correctly? The first big battle. All right. I'm going to go with that. So we have this big battle scene where the Scottish lords.
The big battle does happen before the bribery scene. I think the attempt to bribe him, I think, happens after they invade York, actually.
Yes, I think you're correct. Yeah, so they have this big battle sequence where the lords have taken the field thinking that they're going to negotiate with the crown. And then Wallace and his men show up and kind of throw a monkey wrench in that plan. They basically tell the British where they can stuff it. And I do believe this was the mooning sequence as well, if I remember correctly. Where this is where the kilts may not have been accurate, but they came in handy for that particular scene, where they basically show the British incredible disrespect, but they also show you get a little bit of Wallace's tactical acumen here, where he tells the cavalry on his side, leave. Make them think you're leaving.
Let them see.
And then come around, let them see you leave, and then come around and flank them. And basically they end up routing a much larger British force by a combination of great tactics and just basically catching them unawares. And
I felt bad.
Like all yeah.
They popped the spears up and all those horses were like,
yeah.
Getting nailed everywhere. It's just,
Right.
I just felt bad. I mean, they didn't sign up for the war. They're not on either side, and the horses are just getting destroyed,
Right.
So definitely feel for the horses there.
Hey, you don't know. Those horses could be serial killers.
It could have been. They could have been Bad Horse's ancestors. Yeah.
Yeah. Bad horse. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe they were part nightmares. Just couldn't fly.
But actually, one of the minor controversies of the film, I say minor because it was supposedly put to bed, was the controversy of what did you do to all those poor horses? Apparently, Gibson had to, he and his people had to prove that they didn't slaughter a whole bunch of horses in this film.
Which slaughtered horses? Come on.
Well, I mean, some of those scenes were pretty brutal and graphic, and
that would have gotten them into a lot of hot water right there.
I think they would have been in a little bit of trouble if they actually slaughtered those horses.
Braveheart fed many school cafeterias that day.
Just the idiocy of that. Just the idiocy of that opposite side leader. The fact that he was so cocky that he thought that everything was going to pull off. I was rooting for Braveheart's side of it all the way through.
Right. Definitely. And again, that's like I said, that was part of the reason they won, was the arrogance of the other side. And, Wallace was able to parlay this into tremendous support among the common people, but he still had to work a lot with the nobles who still
the common people had not much to lose. Whereas
exactly
the nobles actually had titles and they got money and they lived comfortably, even though they were under British rule. They didn't really suffer like commoners did. So, they really didn't have too much of a reason to want to join the commoners. So
Right.
the brute, that's what his name, right? He actually, seemed like he wanted to fight. He wanted to fight with the commoners, and then when he does betray him the first time, he saw a look in his face, and Wallace could have killed him right then, and he didn't because he just felt so betrayed, and and that's when he realized that I was on the wrong side. Like I should not have done this, and he saves his life there,
Right.
and he basically the whole rest of the movie, he wants to be on the commoner side, and even when they use him to get Wallace to later on, he's fighting back. He's trying to help Wallace, even though they're doing this to make him
Right.
like the king. Like he's like, I don't even care. Like this is wrong. This is the wrong way to do it, and so I really like
Right.
his character. I mean, he chose wrong
Mhm.
the first time he listened to his father. He chose wrong, but he saw the error of his ways and immediately regretted it. Immediately was like, I fucked up.
Well, of course, that was much further on. That was
Yeah, a
after
little
the
further.
battle where
Little further.
Longshanks himself. Yeah. Early on, Robert early on is kind of an interesting character because you can tell that he does have some decency. You can tell that he thinks that all these lords are being way too self-centered. You can
Yep.
tell that he sees something bigger, something more cohesive as far as because this actually and this is another area where the film is considered to be maybe a bit off on the chronology, is that the feeling of nationalism in that region was not as strong back then as it would become later. It really was a lot of squabbling, fiefdoms, and similar sort of thing. But the Bruce is portrayed as a character who sees, I guess you could say, the future as being cooperation, and he definitely comes off as a character you want to root for, but he also comes off as unwilling to follow his principles the way that Wallace, like he admires Wallace, you can tell that, but you can also tell that he's scared shitless of doing the same thing. And
he wants to do the same thing. He wants to go and his father's basically like, you can't do that. You can't just ride off. The reason we kept our titles, our lands and stuff is because we didn't just go half cocked and fighting like that. So yeah, he definitely has the potential in him, and he wants to do it, but he gets talked down that off his basically off his horse, so he doesn't go and do it.
Robert the Bruce knows the right thing and wants to do the right thing, but his hands are tied pretty much by the obligations that he has to his father and to his position. And he doesn't, it takes him, he eventually does find the strength to buck against that, but it takes a while and some sacrifice along the way.
And apparently a lot of Scottish people were pissed off at the way he was portrayed in this movie. But I mean, honestly, again, I see it as a fairly realistic portrayal of a politician that wants to do the right thing, but at the end of the day, he's a politician. He knows the walk he has to walk, and so that is an interesting story you got running throughout the film. And I just want to go ahead and throw out that Donald Gibson, Mel's brother, is one of the lords, is Stuart. Just throwing that out there just for fun. But sometime not long after we meet Robert the Bruce's father, the leper, we're also introduced to Stephen, who is an Irishman who, for reasons known to himself, has decided to come to Scotland. And I gotta say, he was always one of my favorite characters. I loved that character. My island!
Is it my island? You mean Ireland? Yes, it's my island. He says the reason being there was he's a wanted man on Ireland, but he's not on his island.
Right.
Hence why I chose not right in the head.
Exactly.
You're mental. You're in the right place.
Pretty
Yes,
sure
indeed.
He's like, I have
Stephen
one-
is actually
I have-
schizophrenic, even though they don't, know that
It could
term
be.
yet.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
I love that scene where he's like, if I join you, do I get to kill Englishmen? And then they go off on the tangent side. He's like, yes, but you didn't answer the question. He's like, yes, if you he pulls a knife on him and everything, and it's like, yes, you get to kill an Englishman. He's like, good. Like, puts the knife away, like nothing happened, and like, oh, fight me. And they know he's completely nuts, but he's on their side.
Well, and
So
also
they
he
can't
talks
get
about
through
his relationship with God, like they're old buddies and
Oh,
that
yeah,
sort
yeah,
of thing, and
like-
it's just
like God told him to come do this, and
Right.
and he's like the leader of Ireland, and
yeah, he almost acts like they're drinking buddies or whatever. That's the but yeah, he keeps saying that it's my island, and then there's that great scene later on in the battle where the
Yeah.
Irish conscripts come forward first,
I was just thinking
and
the same thing.
then they all shake hands in the middle of the field, and then he just looks at Wallace. He's like, "What did I tell you? It's my island."
yeah. I was thinking the same thing. That that scene is great. Like, oh, the Irish are gonna fight the Scottish, what? And then I remember it from I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, but I remembered. Oh yeah, they don't fight, do they? They end up joining, and then I saw it. And I'm like, yep, that's what happened. Great.
And
I
one of the
love
great
that.
One of the great fun ironies of this, although again, this is probably one of the reasons the film took so much flack, is of course this is a film about Scotland and the Scottish desire for independence from Britain and all this kind of stuff. And it's like heavily pro-Scottish. And very, 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 very few of the characters are actually played by Scotsmen. And David O'Hara, who plays the Irishman, is one of the few Scots in the cast.
That's funny.
Whereas most of the extras and Brendan Gleeson, who plays Hamish, the Scotsman, is Irish. So is Tommy Flanagan. I want to say Catherine McCormick is. No, she's British, but okay, never mind. There's a lot of Brits and Welshmen in here as well. And then, of course, Donal and Mel Gibson are Australian. You got all this stuff. And it would almost be like, let's say if there was a film about George Washington, where Washington was played by a Brit. Let's do that. And nearly everyone in the film is either British or Irish or Canadian or Australian or even French. Well, there were a lot of French people around then, so they could play their own roles.
Oh.
But anyway, yeah, but hardly any Americans in the cast. What would Americans think of that?
And the few Americans that they do have played English people.
Well, it's all about casting. I think there was a time. There's a time where I think they would have sought out actual. I don't think it would be now. I think now the cast would be racially diverse.
Yeah,
and
you'd have
they would be doing.
Oh, come on!
Puerto Rican.
I mean, it's not that. I mean, again, it's not like it would
Come
be.
on!
It would
they
be
totally
a.
would. They
but that's
totally
the thing.
would.
the idea would be to
Unnecessary.
do blind
they
casting for it. But the difference between blind casting now and blind casting then was more of a, well, we just got to get the white guys on the set that we want. Whereas this time it's we need to have as much inclusion as possible. So it's a little bit better on it, but I do feel like, yeah, as far as historic casting, I don't think that it would be done right regardless. It would be even,
Right.
but it would be even worse if this was filmed in, say, the 50s. Then it would just
Yeah,
be a
yeah.
bunch of Americans playing that in
everyone.
makeup and not even
Yeah.
bothering with they'd just all be speaking in British accents, pretending they're Scottish.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
yeah, this is never going to be portrayed accurately.
And I will say, as bad as some of the accents are in this film, they're not Kevin Costner and Robin Hood bad. So it's you could do worse. But at any rate, so we've seen all the different groups, the different factions. Now, again, I'm trying to remember. I feel like there was Dustin's right. The March on York happened before the Bride, but I feel like something triggered that specifically, and I'm just drawing a blank on it. Does anyone remember specifically that part? Or was it simply Wallace going, well, we beat them on the field here. Let's take the fight to them. Because I know
think
he did
wanted to
that.
take the fight because he mentions it after the fight that he took the Yorkers because that's like the staging point of where they would go to fight against them. So they took their staging point, and he's basically he's fine with just keeping that and not pushing any forward more, just kind of proving that, hey, we got this. You're not going to just have an easy staging point to fight us, which is an awesome tactic. I mean, they took out their staging point, and he could easily keep going, but he wanted to give them the king the chance to give them their freedom and recognize that they're going to be free and back off, and that's all they wanted. They didn't want anything else from them. They didn't want and then that's when they had her come and offer him to be a lord and some land and some money and all this other crap, and
Right. There was also sort of the idea of in a sense it was kind of him thumbing his nose at the British crown, or this could have also been a bloodier version of waving their asses in the air. Basically, just the whole idea of we know where you live, and we can get to you. That's pretty much what it comes down to, is just letting him know we can get to you too. And you're right. They didn't really need to keep marching on to make that point. They kind of sat back and let the king decide. And I like that scene, actually, where the king is sitting there. I feel like this was the scene where he threw the guy out the window. I think it was. But basically, because his son's kind of sitting there going, oh, well, oh, yeah, because that was when the head came in.
Yeah, because he freaked out about the head.
Yeah.
He sat down like, oh my God.
Yeah.
They sent the head of the...
Yeah. But basically, he's sitting there going, well, like, what are we going to do? He's nothing. He's just a peasant, whatever. And then they get the basket with the head, and that completely changes his mind. But the king is like, now, what do I do here? I don't want to put myself in danger. If I send my son, that would only encourage them.
Right.
That's a great line read.
Yeah.
So they send the wife. They're like, well, she's expendable. Yeah. If they kill her, then we can use that to our advantage.
Right, exactly. He's basically he's thinking he is a bloodthirsty sumbitch, and he's sitting there going,
and of course, I think she's actually happy to go, because just hearing about what he's done and that it was for love has just got her swooning over him, and she hasn't even met him, and so she's already like convinced that she's in love with him or definitely has
Um,
strong feelings, and then when she meets him, she's totally captivated. Obviously, because
See, I felt
I'm
like
not
it was her
sure.
maid that was more swooning than her.
No, I think
Uh,
the maid understood, and the way the maid told the story, it
She's
made
the
her
one who,
swoon.
yeah.
Maybe they were both
I'm not,
swooning, but yeah, they were both
See, I
swooning.
never saw it. I never saw it as that at all during that scene. Like, obviously, after they
I did.
meet and she gets a look at him, she's like, "Oh, okay, this might not be so bad." But I think she's more fascinated by the idea of this person who's causing such discomfort for these people that she clearly can't stand.
Yeah,
And
and I mean,
yeah,
I think that the way they portray her, obviously it's wrong because she's a lot younger, but than here. But they portray her as basically a really good, someone who'd be a really good queen because she's caring about the people. She understands the war. She's not sitting there, oh, we gotta stop this war and that and this, but she's always like, if we gotta help with rebuilding and helping the poor people and things like that. That's why she had them keep the money and I love that scene when they ask, well, did you take the money back? So I really like the portrayal of her, that she was very she wasn't an entitled bitch. She was more down to earth, and you definitely want to root for her. And basically, and like she said, she's gonna be queen. She's gonna be in charge. When Longshanks goes, um her husband's such a wimp that he can't run shit. It's gonna be her.
and
So that's her one consolation to everything, is that she's gonna be running the damn country soon. So
And incidentally, that's one thing that probably should be noted about the film. That again was a change from history. Apparently, Longshanks died in battle a few years after Wallace died. But he, in the film, is portrayed as having, I'm going to say this was probably tuberculosis. That was my guess. Or the consumption, as they say. That was my take on it. But he is definitely portrayed as having some ailment that kind of troubles him at the start of the movie, but is getting bad towards the end of it. And so, yes, Isabel is she's able to see the end of the tunnel, you might say. She knows she's going to be in a leadership position very soon.
yeah,
And he knows it too. And they actually do have, at least I think, a discussion on that point.
yeah. When he was in
But
bed,
yeah,
couldn't really reply.
right. So she goes to Bob Wallace, and he turns her down flat. But they do develop a mutual kind of understanding of each other. And yes, she does leave the money to help with things. And of course, Longshanks, his reaction is something like, "Well, you send a woman to do," he just is very dismissive of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what happens when you send a
but
woman to do a man's job.
yeah,
Even
and he looks like he's pissed there for a second,
yeah,
but then he kind of thinks about it, and he doesn't say it out loud, but I think he kind of sees it as a strategic advantage that she did that. He just wouldn't admit it.
right. He doesn't want to admit that she was right about anything.
Right.
Well, I love how she does things, and she turns around and says, "Well, I did it for you, to make you look better." And like the way she does it, it's just done perfectly well. Like make it look like she's doing it all for in his name.
Right.
Not herself or whatever. So she definitely knows how to play the political game very well.
Right. Yes. And and you definitely see more of that as the movie goes on. But but it obviously, having been turned down, the king realizes that he's going to have to confront this issue head on. So we do have a great big. Okay, yeah. Actually, this is where he reveals that he had not actually put all of his hopes on her. That he talks about all the forces that he could amass from the different places, Ireland and the continent and whatever. And his son's like, well, even if you get them all now, it would take weeks. And he's like, I sent for them before I sent her. It was like, and again, just showing what a cold-blooded, calculating ass he looked at her,
and he's like, "Oh, thank you for the distraction," and it worked. So like you were just a pawn. Your mission was meant to fail, and he didn't care if it didn't failed or not, because he wasn't going to live up to his end anyways. That's when she was just like looking at him like, you fucking bastard. But obviously didn't say it. But first thing she does is write a letter and warns Wallace.
Yeah, she sends her lady's maid out there to let him know. They try to set an ambush, and they warn him. Right.
They wanted to destroy Scotland, basically, come up behind them and destroy Scotland behind them. So when they go return home from where they are, they have nothing to return to. So it was a good plan. Luckily, the princess squashed their plans.
They're promised all kinds of like land and titleship and money just to buy them off. And I know that William Lawless isn't having none of that, because then you're still a prisoner, in your own land.
So yeah, like I said, they go to warn him, and he basically they tried to do an ambush, but they're warned off by the princess and her lady's maid, and then of course Wallace and the princess they get to know each other a little better, and then she goes on back, and he goes home ready for battle, only to find that the lords are basically, we don't want to fight. No, we don't want to fight.
They don't care. They're not gaining anything by fighting.
That's that battle where the Irish turn and become part of them.
That's also a great scene.
Just kind of look at him and just ride away on their horses, and that's when you get that moment where he's like, "Oh shit, I was betrayed."
Robert the Bruce is next to the king, and he's wearing a black knight helmet, so you can't see his face. And when William took off after him and found out it was him, he was so betrayed that he just fell back like I can't believe that you betrayed me like this. And like I say, he could have killed him. He had him, and when he saw it was him, he stopped and just was like, no, it can't be you.
Well, yeah. Before that, they make a point.
The iron mask thing off of him, and he's just so visibly hurt, he just can't do anything.
They make a point of the guy in the mask being someone notable. Like they make a point of making it like it's going to be a big reveal. And I'll be honest, the first time I saw the movie, I think I thought it was actually the prince. And I think I thought it was actually his father basically telling him, you do this now or you're done. Now, I think that was the way I read it. But then when the mask came off, I was surprised that it was Robert the Bruce.
Right.
But
I know.
I don't think I've, that was an interesting reveal. But again, when the first time I saw this, it was a long time ago. So, but it is interesting how they played that off. And yes, the look of sheer betrayal on Gibson's face and Wallace. That was a really good scene. That was a really effective scene, I thought.
Oh, yeah, totally.
The battle itself, this is the Battle of Falkirk. It's a pretty brutal battle.
Very brutal.
Very brutal. They do manage to get the king and a few of his people to run away, but it is brutal. And again, nothing like the end.
Wallace ends up going after the king, and that's when the knight with the metal helmet ends up coming back and dealing with him. And Wallace was shot with an arrow. So at first I thought he was immediately hurt, like beyond.
He was hurt.
Yeah. So.
Well, so that was actually that was again the Battle of Falkirk. I do want to mention a couple of the other, these are based on historical battles, from what I understand, and I think it was the first one that was the Battle of Stirling Bridge, which, if you notice, there's not a bridge to be seen in that whole scene. And apparently, one of the trivia bits I like here, when asked by a local why the Battle of Stirling Bridge was filmed on an open plain, Gibson answered that the bridge got in the way. The local, answered, that's what the English found. I just thought that was kind of an amusing little thing there. But I do believe this battle is the one that finally does in Campbell, because they have that scene afterwards where they're dressing all the wounds and everyone is really, really hurt. And again, Campbell has like a chest wound. It's this gaping wound. And at one point he lost a hand. I can't remember what happened in the other battle.
The guy, some soldier came by and was like, took an axe and like chopped his hand. He's like, and stabbed the guy.
Right.
They got him.
So this is where you get see Hamish go all weepy because he doesn't want to see his old man.
He got an arrow under his arm. I think that's what I think it was an arrow.
I think that was the other one.
They had to rip it out of him, and they had to use the hot iron to saw it.
Right.
It was like that's when he's like, they were like, hold him down, and then when he got up, he's like punching people. That'll wake you up in the morning.
Right. That was an amusing sequence there. So basically, then in the follow-up to this, you also see Robert go and confront his father, and just like he's like, just like, I can't do this anymore, and all that kind of stuff. And we've got, let's see here. I believe it was right after this, actually, wasn't it, that they showed that one of the lords and Robert were talking with Wallace, and it turns out that he was being led into a trap, and that Robert didn't know anything about. The other one,
right.
And then that's where he is delivered to the English, and of course, by this point, Longshanks is pretty much bedridden. He's, not long for the world. But they manage to catch Wallace, and they get him over, take him over there. And here you get one of, I always thought, one of the coolest scenes. I always thought it was one of the coolest scenes where, again, it's like right before Longshanks dies, actually, where his son's kind of sitting across the room, just kind of, la-di-da, not
waiting for him to drop dead.
exactly. And then Isabella comes in, and she's kind of, whispers a few things in his ears, and she's like, I want you to know your blood will die with you. She's like, there's a child growing in my womb that's not of your line.
Yeah,
and of course he starts
Wallace.
freaking out a little bit. But his son's just looking on like, what's going on? What are you saying? And she's just saying these brutal things to him. And I loved it.
She did try to get him to have mercy for Wallace.
Right.
And he's like, she's like, even in this state, you have no mercy for anyone.
Yeah.
That's when she started telling him all this other shit. Basically, his line is gonna end here, and she has Wallace's baby, and
right.
there's gonna be
it's like, you see, death comes to us all. But before it comes to you, know this, your blood dies with you. The child who's not in your line grows in my belly. Your son will not sit long on the throne, I swear it. And then apparently that was not totally off base. Apparently obviously Wallace was not the father of her child, but apparently she did depose Edward II at some point, with the help of a child, and I think it was like her lover or whatever it was. So basically, it was kind of an ominous pronouncement that she was making there. That it was a very ominous pronouncement that actually was at least somewhat based in reality. Just the particulars were all different.
Right, they made it better for the movie.
It was great dramatically, no doubt.
Yeah, make it for that Wallace is actually the father,
right.
a commoner. That the enemy of England his son is gonna rule.
And meanwhile, he is taken to the execution point, where we get to see some. We get to see a little taste of, apparently a taste of what Gibson wanted to show everybody. He apparently tamed it down considerably for the final product. But someone mentioned earlier that the real Wallace was like drawn and quartered and disemboweled and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's
that.
What's that?
You mentioned that.
Okay. Well, there we go. Okay.
Well,
there you go. Yeah. But yeah, so they kind of imply, even though they behead him, they kind of imply that they weren't going to stop with that. I believe, at least according to legend, if not fact, they actually sent pieces of them to all the corners of England as sort of like a warning.
They said that in the movie. They said that. So
okay.
I don't know if that was accurate or not, but they did say that in the movie that they sent his four limbs to the four corners.
Okay. It's such a delightful thought,
There is one scene we skipped over that was kind of funny.
Okay.
After Robert the Bruce betrays him, and they're sitting around, and he had killed the other lord, and they're like, we don't know who's next, and he's like, and Robert's like, maybe you, maybe me, and the other guy's like, blah blah blah. He's like, I am serious, and then the fucking body drops down, and
yes,
his look of sheer terror on Robert the Bruce's face, he's like, You know, I mean, he knows it's serious, and he knows he could die, and he's already regretted everything he's done. But you know, I think I think Wallace knew he regretted it afterwards, and even though he betrayed him, he still was their best choice as like a leader. So he wasn't gonna kill him, but
Oh.
he definitely wanted to scare him. And so, like, yeah, I can get at you too. Like, this could be you right here. You know, that was just, I don't know. I really enjoyed that scene, and it was just so well done. You know,
that execution scene, I'll admit, as a 16-year-old kid, when I first saw this film, who only, by the way, tended to watch action films and comedies, it definitely bothered me a lot as a child. Even today,
Oh yeah.
it's a harder scene for me to watch. My stomach has been strengthened by films like, say, Bunny the Killer Thing. But at the same time, the way that they performed the scene, I actually felt like that death was more effective at making me cringe than any death in that movie did, just because of how they accentuated it. So, you know, it's still a hard one to watch. And I'm sure if I watched it this week instead of when I last watched it, I'm sure that scene would still make me cringe, because it made me cringe just about a year ago when I watched it on Blu-ray for the first time.
Yeah, and again, this was kind of early in Gibson's career as a director. He, again, as Dave pointed out, this was a film that was brought to him. Actually, Gibson himself did not want to play Wallace. He thought he was too old, and he was about 10 years older, I think, than the actual man was. And yet the studio's like, well, we want you to play Wallace, and that's how you'll get your movie made. But yeah, the original cut of the film apparently was closer to 3 hours and 20 minutes or something like that. And some of what was cut was some of the more graphic sequences.
In fact, it was Brad Pitt that he'd considered in the role before as Sir William Wallace, which would have been a totally different experience. I guess we would have gotten Troy before it was Troy, but
right. And again, what we were saying earlier about casting decisions, there you get a full-on American playing the role. That'd be a little different, a little interesting. But but yeah, it's anyway, I think we have hit most of the plot and most of the characters. Does anyone have anything that they really want to bring out that we've run over too quickly or skipped altogether, or that you just really want to harp on? Particularly Forrest, we haven't heard a whole lot from you. So if you have anything really we skipped over? No, okay. Anyone else?
I think we'll cover what I want to cover in my favorites.
Okay. Well, that is upcoming. So I guess let's move on to production. We've talked a little bit about some of the historical license done with the film. Apparently, the Scots were wearing kilts about 500 years too early and painting their faces about 1,000 years too late. But other than that, we did get some relatively, at least on the British side, I think some impressive period garb. And I would say the sets and everything were pretty, they did the job very well, I think. Does anyone else have any thoughts on the basic?
The battles were a very brutal level that had been seen somewhat before, but I think that Mel Gibson added a flourish to it that hadn't quite been seen. Of course, you see it reflected and perfected over time with Shoot the Patriot also did a really excellent job in showing that brutal yet sometimes lighthearted, like hero style of battle.
Right.
And of course, Apocalypto showed the brutality to an extreme that only Passion of the Christ topped.
Yeah.
And but I also would look at other films like, say, The Messenger, which is not a Mel Gibson film, but I would say that The Messenger took a lot of notes from films
Yeah.
like Braveheart when it came to how they did their battles and approached it.
You talking about the one about Joan of Arc?
Yes.
Okay, because that wasn't the one I actually watched. I haven't seen that one.
I watched that one in theaters because Francois was obsessed with it.
Okay.
That
Well,
was-
the better comparison with Gibson's work, of course, will be Hacksaw Ridge, because that was a wartime one that had a lot of battle scenes, which definitely showed the development of his craft.
Or even Saving Private Ryan. Did that come
Well,
before?
yeah. Well, yeah, Saving Private Ryan 3 years after this. That was 98.
But I do feel like that brutality, I don't know whether they actually took anything from Braveheart, but definitely that brutality was something that you did not see a lot before Braveheart. So, yeah.
Well, some of the techniques in the film, Gibson has said that he borrowed some techniques from George Miller from his Mad Max days. And one of them apparently was removing occasional frames of footage, and it gave it somewhat more of a choppy look in battle, which I guess I can see that looking back on it. But that was kind of an interesting thing that, like I said, he credited George Miller with giving him that notion. And of course, speaking of the camera work and editing and whatever, I would say this film is pretty decently. I mean, it's put together well. I would say, as far as it's a well edited film. It's blindingly manipulative, and you don't reach that level of manipulation without being very well put together. So, the music helps too. This has a phenomenal score from James Horner, and the late James Horner, who did some really great work over the years. And I've heard this cited as one of his most popular. I doubt it's more popular overall than Titanic was, but it's definitely almost up there. And it definitely helps a lot with this film's emotional impact, I think.
Yeah, and I have to say that it was. Oh shoot! I lost my point. Oh well.
The music.
But yeah, with this one, I do feel. Oh yes, the manipulation. I do feel like this did an excellent job at manipulating the feelings of the audience, from the whole part at the beginning to being able to empathize with Wallace, and yet being able to demonize Shanks in the English to a degree. And that one was perfected with the Patriot, because the Patriot not only used that same level of manipulation with sound, effects, and writing, but improved upon it. That's
all right. Yeah, right. Actually, the film, one could argue that it worked too well in that respect. A lot of people actually have accused this film of being particularly anti-British, even going so far as to call it xenophobic against the British. Which I find it interesting that you're saying that Roland Emmerich did The Patriot. And I will say he was a more seasoned director, but I've very rarely seen. I think his most impressive film was probably Independence Day in terms of manipulating the audience. But I'll admit The Patriot came reasonably close.
And
It's been a while since I've seen that, though.
And in all fairness, if you really want to look at bad guys in history, the British are not exactly immune to being bad guys in history.
No.
Oh,
when it comes
definitely
to
not.
colonization, xenophobia, all that stuff. Yeah, it's all right to portray them as the bad guys every once in a while.
Right. Now, of course, one of the great things about this film, and we can probably give Randall Wallace a good amount of credit for this, is there were some really, really good lines in this film. Some of them were, a little over quoted, one might say, over the years. Probably the main one being, "You may take my life, but you'll never take my freedom." That's a big one. Yeah, every man dies,
which
and
is actually
everyone.
wrong.
What's that?
He actually said they may take out our lives,
Yeah,
our freedom. But you're right.
that's true.
It is usually said the other way, kind of like with the Luke Skywalker thing with your father is it's most misquoted too.
Right. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that right there, because I just came across one of my other favorites. I mentioned before how Robert's father reminded me a bit of Palpatine, and he has that one line: "At last, you know what it means to hate. Now you're ready to be a king."
Right.
And Robert's like, "My hate will die with you," which I thought was a great line. But you could definitely hear his father saying, "Feel the hate flow through you."
It gives you strength.
Yeah. And I do, one of my favorite, we were talking before about Stephen's mental issues. One of his great quotes is where he is approaching, I think this was before he had really proven himself as part of the group, and he's approaching Wallace, and it looks like he's getting ready to attack him, and then he lets loose and kills the guy on the other side who is about to kill Wallace, and Stephen's like, "I didn't like him anyway. He wasn't right in the head."
Right. I love that line. That was a great line.
It takes one to know one, as they say. But yeah. So anyway, anyone else have any thoughts on the overall production?
I thought the production was great. The sets were decent. I thought the costumes were pretty decent. I understand that there are some inaccuracies with the Scots and their kilts and whatnot, but there's a great kilt scene that I'll mention momentarily in the favorites.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know, if you didn't have the kilts, it would feel wrong. Even if it was significant, if it wasn't historically accurate, it would have just felt wrong to not have the kilts and stuff. So, it just helped sell the movie, I think. Yeah, the production is absolutely phenomenal. Like I said, and the locations where they used as well.
Right. Interestingly enough, one of the Oscars this was nominated for was costume design. It was also nominated for original screenplay, sound, film editing, and original dramatic score. And it won picture, director, cinematography, sound effects, editing, and makeup. And I love that one of the people who won the makeup was Peter Frampton. Obviously, he's not the same one, but that just amuses me. But at any rate, I think it probably should have won for score. But anyway, Best Picture probably should have gone to The Usual Suspects. But, that's a conversation for another day, I'm sure. We need to cover that one of these days, or you know what I mean. Anywho, shall we move to favorites?
Definitely.
Okay. Dave, how about we start with you?
Alrighty. One of my favorite scenes in here has to do with the first battle, and it's the fact that they lift their kilts and they're absolutely naked underneath, and then they turn around and show their bums, just to kick off
Right.
the insultation part of the battle. Because it's basically like a fuck you to the other side,
Yeah.
and a Hail Mary to say you can't fuck with us.
Or
But
you could also say, I fought in your general direction.
but there are so many scenes in here. The moment when young William Wallace walks in and sees those dead bodies in the very beginning, to that speech of freedom, to the end drawn and quartered scene. There are so many like little moments that I will take from this, and I'll have to think about that Emperor Palpatine thing from you guys on his father, because
Right.
it is amusing.
All right. How about you, Brandon?
Well, I really like the scene where the chimpanzee Wallace kills everybody with the lightning from his butt. Oh wait, no, wrong one. The scene, I guess any of the scenes with the crazy Irish guy, I don't know. He always tended to steal the scenes for me.
All right. How about you, Dustin?
It's a little hard to pick one thing because there's a lot of like really memorable stuff in this movie. Actually, kind of a lot of different one-liners, like like "That'll wake you up in the morning, boy," like comes to mind. And "Not my gentle son," like that whole sequence. I mean, it's really difficult for me to just pick one thing. I'd say maybe I think Falkirk is the first big battle that they're in, right? I'd say maybe the Battle of Falkirk.
Falkirk was the big one where Longshanks actually took the field briefly. Yeah.
Or was it? Am I getting Falkirk and Stirling mixed up then?
Stirling, I think, was the first one. Right?
Okay, so I guess I'd say Stirling. Or well, York is kind of a fun sequence too. "I'm not about to tell my uncle I've lost the greatest city in northern England," and then it just immediately cuts to they lose.
Right. Well, he didn't have to tell him. Well, not in so many words. All right. Okay. How about you, Forrest?
Well, I would agree with Dave. Definitely the scene where they go commando as a nice little fuck you to the British. Also the scene where they look like they're about to fight the Irish, but then they just all shake hands and bullshit with each other.
All right. Yeah, it's like he said, where he's like, "What I tell you? It's my island." That was definitely fun. How about you, Tammy? What are your favorite moment, scene, what have you?
Well, I actually like one like David did. I like that first battle where they pull their kilts up in the front and then they turn around and show them their ass too. I got a kick out of that. And would you say the crazy Irish guy's name is Steve?
Steven, yes.
Yeah, Steven. I like when that scene where the one liner, but I like that how he was coming. Wallace thought he was coming after him, and he wasn't. He got the guy on the other side. So that was what I liked. And
Right.
then Stephen would happen to be one of my favorite characters too. I liked how off
Right.
the wall he was. But
Oh,
he,
yeah, I
but he had
didn't.
Wallace's back. So that was the best part. You know, he was off the wall, but he
Yeah.
really, really had Wallace's back.
Yes. Yeah, he did. Him and
What we
Hamish
really
were very
need-
loyal.
What we really need is the story of Stephen. That's what we need.
Right. Actually, I don't know. Did anyone else really give favorite characters? We can go ahead and do that too if anyone has a particular favorite character. I guess we'll take Kroll's favorites, and then anyone who wants to throw out a character can go ahead and have at it. So Kroll, what were your favorites scenes and characters?
Well, most of the scenes I've already mentioned. But the one scene I think about more than any other when I think of this film is his speech, which we just mentioned earlier. You know, you can take our lives, but you can't take our freedom. And that whole speech, you know, to rile up the guys that they basically didn't want to fight. You know, they're like, we're gonna lose, that we're outmanned and everything. And you know, he just comes up with this speech, and it's just so well done. Yeah, showing the asses and stuff was funny. But I have to go with the speech just because it was so iconic and so you know I'd have to go with that was the favorite scene. As far as characters, William Wallace is definitely my favorite. Stephen is definitely up there. I really like the princess as well. So yeah, they were basically the favorite characters. Stephen was a riot. Wish we would like to see his story, see more of him, because he's in the movie, but he has some memorable scenes, but he's not in it enough, in my opinion. We could have had some more of him. Very funny character and enjoyable. He was definitely crazy, but it was a good crazy. He's on the good side, anyways. Yeah, so that's basically my favorites.
All right. And did anyone else want to throw out a favorite character who maybe didn't before, or I'll give you the floor for a moment.
Unfortunately, with this film, there were many favorites. I guess if I had to think of all of them, I did like Robert the Bruce's character. I did like William Wallace. I did like Hamish, and I did like Stephen. So I liked all of them like in their own way, and I can't really just like choose just one, you know.
Yeah, that sounds good.
There can only be one.
No, this is not quite the Highlander, but they wanted it to be apparently. But did okay?
It's funny because I watched this on Amazon, and one of the movies they mentioned you should watch after Braveheart was Highlander.
Right, that makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, and then anyhow, I guess I'll go ahead. I have trouble picking a favorite scene in this one, or like a couple of moments that I forgot to mention earlier. Like one of Longshank's great quotes, which is kind of shows what a dick he is, but also it's a throwaway that he says early on where he's like, the problem with Scotland is that it's full of Scots. Yeah. But then and then one of my favorite moments, and this will go down as one of my favorite scenes because it showed what an ass he was in the Battle of Falkirk when he tells the archers to fire. And someone's like, well, won't we hit our own troops? And he's like, yes, but we'll hit theirs as well.
And we have plenty of reserves.
Right. No, but just the way he says it. Well, yes, but we'll hit theirs as well. And it's just like, damn, that is just some
brutal.
cold.
That's some
Oh,
that's some top scene
yeah.
shit right there. Yeah, like,
And
you
yes,
know.
I will admit the scene with Steven where he ends it by going, he wasn't right in the head. The rock scene that we mentioned earlier with Hamish, that little competition where with Hamish, and all the scenes with his father, including his death scene, just like all those, like, why won't he just and the little scene of Isabella whispering in Longshank's ears and his reaction to it and all that. Those are probably some of my favorite scenes. As far as characters, I do think Steven is my favorite character. There's a lot of good characters here. Isabella, Robert, William Wallace, Hamish, but Steven's definitely my favorite. But honestly, the most notable one, the one that you love to hate, has got to be Longshanks. I mean, he really is one of cinema's great villains, and I like me a good villain, even though I can't stand the bastard. I like when he's on screen because it's never a dull moment. But at any rate, did anyone else have any thoughts, or are we just about done with her?
I think we're just about done with it. The only thing I will say, I did like the romance in the very beginning. You know,
oh yeah,
it was a nice little love story. So
yeah, they did a good job of kind of setting that up, and again that was, and again not a favorite scene, but a notable scene was when they killed Murren, because that's like, holy shit, they went there.
Well, I also we didn't really mention, but when he grabs the guy that did it and he puts him up against the same place and grabs a knife and cuts his throat exactly the same way. So it's like, poetic justice there, that he did it exactly the same way, and the guy's look on his face like, you can't be doing this to me, and just, William Wallace is like, I don't give a shit who you are. You killed my wife and now you're gonna die.
Yes, you killed my wife. Prepare to die.
You killed my wife. Prepare to die.
Yes. Alrighty. So if that is everything, I guess we can go ahead and go on to outros then. So let's start with you, Brandon.
Had to find the unmute. I'm SeptumSin of SeptumSin versus the World. We like physical media on this channel. We've been kind of adapting to Jake's work schedule here, but I do have it so that when he is working late, we will have a pickup with both of us on it. But we still do pickups. We still, when I have time, we do reviews of what's coming out. I try to get people on when I have the chance. If I can, I just sit there and I take a look at what's coming up on Blu-ray and DVD myself. One of the most interesting things going on in the near future, or I should say current, is that I have a new film psychoanalysis, which is my fourth episode of that series, where I cover the final part of the Craiglon incident. So for those of you who are interested in it and want to have a deep dive where I go through each part of the film, talk about things that I noticed, jokes or minor features, it's a nice little thing to do a deep dive, where most tend to try and cover more popular films. I want to cover less known films for that sort of thing. So if you can check that out, I think I I did a fairly good job on it, and Lord knows it definitely took enough time to put together. But otherwise, a lot of our other stuff is a little bit further along in the month, so I'll wait till we're closer before we cover that. Thank you.
All right. How about you, Dustin?
I have a YouTube channel for horror collecting, The Crypt of Horrors, where I've started posting again at long last. Should have some new videos in a day or two. And I have an Instagram for my horror collection as well. Also The Crypt of Horrors. And that's pretty much it, I guess. You can find me on Twitter as DurCryptaccess if you want. And yeah, see you around.
Sounds good. How about you, Forrest? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
All right. My name is Forrest Bennett. I'm a independent film producer and occasional actor based in Long Island, New York. Recently worked as an actor person on an upcoming trouble movie called Bring on the Damned. And I'll also be working on a music video this coming weekend, which should be coming out. I don't know when that's coming. Which should be exciting to work on. And also my Instagram page is username is my name is not Gump, where you can see me where I do comic book pickups. And then my YouTube channel is Forrest B. Bennett, where I do movie pickups and various other things I filmed.
Sounds good. How about you, Tammy? Tell us a little about you and what you do. Tammy?
I like going on here and talking about movies with everybody, and I go on another channel. Yes. Do you mean? Yes, I like going on here and talking about the movies with everybody, and going on another channel. I do have my own collections, and now that the summer's finally here, I'll be taking out my car for shows.
Very good. Very good. And Kroll, how about you? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and since it's your month, maybe give us a taste of what we're looking at next week, too.
Okay. My nickname is Kroll, and I enjoy watching movies and TV shows. I'm disabled, so I don't work. I also read and play games. So I come on this show, and I also come on the other show with Dave and Tammy. Also, we do movie reviews, and yeah, it's a fun time. I love talking about movies that I've seen. So this is a really great thing here. Sunday I did a movie with Mo review, and then yesterday did Sunday's normal podcast yesterday, and then podcast today. So just 3 movies in a row. Really like doing that. It's a fun time. So, but next week we got Hear No Evil, See No Evil with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder. One of their best movies in my opinion. All their movies together are great and just so funny. I think the first one I was stir crazy at the drive-in when I was a kid. But this is probably my favorite with them as a couple. Great comedy. If you haven't seen it, check it out and check out our review next week of it.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. I think that was the first movie I saw the two of them together in, so a little bit of nostalgia there for me. So, for my part, I'm Kotobukijake. I am a film and media fan from here in Central Virginia, and I'm the co-host of SeptumSin versus the World. where, as he said, we talk about all kinds of physical media. We did our discussion this week on what we watched last month. His list tends to be a lot longer than mine because between working a full-time job and having a native plant nursery that I helped start, I'm a little busy most of the time, and also have limited access to the TV because family reasons. So I don't get a lot of viewing done, but I do get to watch what we do for these channels because it's fun to come out here and shoot the breeze with fellow movie lovers on different, sometimes very different films. I think we have covered a pretty good variety so far this year, and it'll be nice to see where we go from here, I think. Only at least maybe one major dud so far. Mostly they've been pretty good. So, and of course you can, well, yeah, I think that about covers it for me. Take it away, Dave.
Alrighty, my name is David Strege. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this magical film journey as we discover films that we have seen and what we think of them as we go along here. And I think we all enjoy discussing them together. So, but I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I go on about my own various pickups, and from time to time I do my own reviews. So check out that channel and this channel, and let us know down in the comments what you thought of our discussion. I don't have anything. Check out our last discussion as we talked about South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut yesterday. If you get a chance, that would be great. And let us know down in the comments what you thought of it. And continue to come back and listen to us if you can. So like, share, and subscribe. Hopefully you have a pleasant journey wherever you are. And all I got to say is freedom! So
yes, indeed.
everyone...
That's not how he
take
says
up their it's as good as I could have done it, but everyone say goodnight.
Hey, everyone.
Good night.
My island.
Good night. Good night.